got the distribution call, you got the placement, you did everything right. And somewhere between the purchase order and the shelf, something went sideways. Your product isn't there, or it's there, but it's wrong. Every CPG brand hits this wall, both of them hit it more than once. I'm Jordan Karcher, founder and CEO of iLean. Know Thy Shelf is the show for founders and CPG superstars who are done taking anyone's word for what's happening on the shelf and who are putting one question underneath all of it. Your product is listed as in stock. Is it though? Elan, you're building sour milk in New York City, and I think what makes your story really interesting isn't just the product, it's how you thought about getting close to the customers from the very beginning. So take me back to the beginning. You went to Stanford for computer science. You spent years as a product manager in tech. What made you look at the yogurt aisle and think something's broken here?
Yeah, I mean, it really, Jordan, stemmed from a personal issue. And I was an athlete in college at Stanford. I was on the rowing team. So we had very early mornings. And our coach, after practice, would basically line up Greek yogurt bowls for all of us. And so we'd eat it right after we got off the water. And from there, that habit sort of stuck. So every day throughout college and even after graduating, I would eat a Greek yogurt bowl for breakfast. And what I realized is that after I graduated in my early 20s, I was going through a ton of gut health issues. So, chronic inflammation, bloating, my hormones were out of balance. And, it turns out your gut is incredibly important for your overall well-being. Like 90% of your serotonin is produced in your gut, 70% of your immune system resides in your gut. So it's really a pivotal kind of aspect of our health. And I dug into this product that I thought was probiotic and actually contributing to my microbiome, and realized that none of the yogurt on the shelf that I could buy was really doing anything to support my gut. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, it's about the cultures that are used. So there are thousands of different bacteria strains, all of them playing really different roles. The ones that are used in commercial yogurts are called the yogurt strains. They are manufactured and designed and bred to make really good tasting yogurt as efficiently as possible. They're not the cultures that are really good for your gut and help with digestion and help with bloating and help with even things like oxytocin production throughout your kind of hormonal regulation. And so it wasn't the right cultures. And even the products that were adding probiotics in them didn't have enough quantities. They weren't really surviving for as large of quantities as you need them to be to actually make a dent. And so what happened was I was like, okay, I'm eating this probiotic fermented product every single day. And now I have to go spend hundreds of dollars on pills and powders and supplements to help heal all these gut health issues. Like, what if I could actually put these two things together? And yogurt as a vehicle is actually an incredibly good host for probiotics. It's just that commercial yogurts aren't designed to do that. And so I took these cultures that are found in pills and powders and supplements and fermented it directly into a yogurt. So now I could have this thing that I'm already eating every single day, and it can provide the benefits that my body needed from a probiotic standpoint, and saw incredible benefits from doing this. And what kind of my co-founder and I really realized in the end is that 2/3 of Americans, if not more, have digestive issues. And far few people are like willing and able or can afford to take a pill or a powder supplement to actually help with that. But yogurt as a product category is a 92% household penetration. And so if we can take this thing that people are already eating every single day, just like I was, and actually design a version that supplies probiotic benefits to help people have optimal microbiomes, we'll be able to reach far more people than selling another pill or a powder.
So you're delivering a health mission as well as a great CPG product, and it had to start somewhere. And so you have these realizations. You're going through this process of knowing what you eat and the benefits that you're not getting from the product. How did you tackle the first iterations of creating this product in your kit?
Yeah.
Or less, what was that first early day like of creating this idea of sour milk?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was very experimental. Luckily, yogurt is, people are a little bit scared when it comes to making yogurt because it's kind of a fermented dairy product. It's actually a really simple food. And, the origins of yogurt is a really interesting story. Thousands and thousands of years ago, nomadic people were migrating kind of throughout the desert. And what they did was they put milk in intestinal linings of camels and other animals to sort of store it there during transport. And what happened is that the intestinal walls of those animals had bacteria in it. And the outdoor temperature was hot. It was like above 100 degrees. And so you basically have this like incubation fermentation channel where that milk was sitting with a ton of bacteria, and then it was getting fermented by the heat from the outdoors. And so by the time they arrived in their kind of end place, they had yogurt. They went kind of liquid milk to yogurt. And that's like literally how you make yogurt. You take milk and you add bacteria to it, and then you kind of reach it, kind of heat it up to a temperature that allows that bacteria to become active and multiply. And so, from a process standpoint, like, you can get yogurt makers on Amazon and literally take milk, whatever kind of milk you want to use, and add probiotics or yogurt cultures to it. And then you'll have yogurt just in a couple hours.
And so is that how you started? Was it just a little homemade yogurt machine?
Homemade yogurt machine. I mean, I really started by doing a ton of research. So what I wanted to go for was like, okay, I'm buying this yogurt. It's not doing anything for my gut. How do I actually design basically a probiotic supplement in yogurt form? And the kind of process of that is, okay, there are 10,000 different bacteria strains. Of those, there's probably, I think it's close to like 40,000. Of those, a certain subset are clinically known as probiotic strains. So actually support benefits to the host. Of those probiotic strains, a certain subset will actually survive in a yogurt form. There's actually plenty of probiotic bacteria that can't interact with liquid or not good with oxygen, and so they wouldn't survive in that form. And then of those ones that survive, there's only a certain number that will actually like taste good and like yield a favorable product, right? So sort of like dwindles down to like a handful of strains that could actually be efficacious and still taste good in a yogurt product. So that was a lot of the recipe iteration was around that.
Got it. Interesting. And so your co-founder, you mentioned Kiki, comes from a very different background, human biology, also at Stanford, and then private equity. How did those skill sets and your skill sets really come together to create the starting point for Sour Milk beyond just the product and insight?
Yeah, when we were first starting, so he and I were best friends in college. We actually lived together right after graduating in San Francisco. And so she was subject to this sort of yogurt making. Everyone was making sourdough during COVID. I was like making yogurt for my gut. And so she was subject to this sort of process that I was going through. And when we first decided to start working on Sour Milk and take this product to market, we kind of had, a big picture thought process around it. And it was, in order to do a consumer business really, really well, you have to be good at two things. Number one, execution. Like, can you actually make a product that tastes good? Can you order packaging on time? Can you find a manufacturing plant? Like, can you literally do the product and handle logistics and freight and all of those things? And, transparently, that's not rocket science. Like, it's a pretty tried and true thing. If you are good at execution and can be detail oriented and stay on top of it, like, you should be able to do that. And, we both had really good high execution skills. And then the second part was marketing and storytelling. And I think all too often founders tend to like over index on building the product and making the product, and then kind of pick their head up and they're like, okay, now I need to tell people about it. But really you have to do both of those things really well. You have to be incredibly good at distribution and telling the story of that product. Because if you have one where like incredible story, but you can't execute on the product, it's not going to go anywhere. If you have you made the best yogurt in the entire world, but you're not good at marketing it, it's not going to go anywhere. And so those had to be at equal weight. Like on any given day or week, there should be an equal number of hours that we spend on logistics and execution as we do on marketing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so in the beginning, we were playing around. We knew that, part of our angle here, especially in a dairy industry, which is traditionally dominated by men, pretty old and kind of slow moving, and quite frankly, just kind of sleepy. We knew that there were a couple things we wanted to bring to that industry, and one of which is just building the company in public. And so we started posting well before we even had a product or a name or anything. It was just, my co-founder kind of had this hook that was, I'm quitting my job in private equity to start a yogurt company with my best friend. And that was like the hook that sort of sent us on that trajectory of telling our story.
Is that TikTok oriented? Was that the platform to drive most?
Yeah. Well, what was funny is we started working on Sour Milk sort of nights and weekends while we were still at our full-time jobs. So there's about a 6-month overlap of kind of building Sour Milk, getting off the ground, and then still working full-time at our respective jobs. And our thought process was like, okay, none of our friends use TikTok, so why don't we just start like posting on TikTok? Because then like, people that we know are not going to see it. And like, we were so wrong. Like it turns out a lot of our friends use TikTok. And kind of the first video that got posted ended up getting like over 400,000 views just like in a day or two. And from there was sort of like a snowball effect.
So you found yourself leaving that job pretty quickly to take this on full time. And it sounded like when you started, you guys were like selling out of paper bags. I think drug deal model, which I like. You were really just out there like hustling bags of yogurt on street corners in New York City.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And our thought process around that was like, There were a couple of factors. Number one is just speed to market. I think like you probably know well that even to order our final packaging, it's like several months, right? And so we could have the product and the recipe ready to go, but then we have to wait for all this packaging things to come in. And so we were like, what if we just filled in blank cups? We ordered blank cups from a facility and just like hand stickered. And so we hand stickered 8,000 cups over the course of the summer just to like sell that way. And so there's a speed to market. And then there was also this huge value that frankly, like most brands lose entirely when they sell in grocery stores. And that's like the customer relationship. And so when we were selling through the drug deal model and had our customers literally come meet us on a street corner to pick up their yogurt every week, we were building a relationship with them. We gave them our personal phone numbers and we're like, text us feedback. And that just goes an incredibly long way. Now that we're on retail shelves, we don't own that relationship with the customer anymore. The store does. And so building that from the get-go is really important.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I'm a huge proponent of early days, creating those feedback loops, both about what's working and most importantly, what's not working. Once you're on the retail shelf, you do, as you mentioned, become partitioned from your own product. And it's a huge issue that early stage companies I think run into. And so you really did kick the can a bit. It seems like on getting retail distribution, you built up the in-person audience first. Being new to the space, and I know you're very research oriented, probably did due diligence beforehand. What was it like when you really started to approach retailers for the first time? And was there anything in that process that was completely foreign to you, or did you feel pretty comfortable with the first couple points of distribution?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, the entire industry is totally foreign to us, right? So like almost everything that we're doing, we're kind of learning on the fly. I think our advantage with retail was that we had a customer base. So even before we went to our factory, like a lot of people ask us, how did you even find your factory? How did you like get that command? And when we walked in the door to the factory, we had a wait list of 2,000 people
Hmm,
that were ready to buy our yogurt. And
right.
that's really how you can get sort of like a large scale company that has like, big MOQs and to kind of take a chance on you. So we're like, look, we have people who are already like committed to purchasing this yogurt. We just need someone to help us make it. And I think there's this very similar parallel with the stores that we initially launched with. We were like, hey, we've been selling yogurt in your neighborhood on the Upper East Side or in Soho or on the Lower East Side or in Brooklyn. We've been selling yogurt to hundreds of customers for the past 3 months. We'll basically take that point of sale and just drive it to your store. And so the risk for them is a little bit lower. Like we would launch with the store and then send out an email blast to all of our customers that were zip coded in that area being like, hey, we're removing the drug deal pickup model, but we're now, you can get us now 24/7 at this store, which is a lot more convenient for them and for us.
For sure, and it sounds like you really focused more on probably depth and breadth when it came to distribution and velocity in those stores. But that also comes with some problems if you have a popular product, especially on social media, where you probably have to say no to some places. Have you had that experience where you're looking at certain places and saying like would be great, but not yet, or not a good fit for us? Like, how do you approach that side of not just saying yes and then being buried with stagnant product?
The biggest issue for us is the logistics of getting the product there. So I actually think like in a perfect world, the vast majority of the stores that reach out to us, whether it be down in Florida or in Los Angeles or in San Francisco, like we would love to fulfill those orders, but we can't ship our product. It's not like we can, go to FedEx and pack it up and then send it off to a grocery store like some of the non-perishables. And so launching in a place like California that's on the other side of the country isn't as simple as, okay, let's just get a store and then go. It's like, okay, how are we going to handle shelf life guarantees? What's the cost of getting it there? And like, do we have to have a full truckload to make it worth it? And it has to be refrigerated and all these other things. And so I think the biggest frustrating part about where we're at right now is we do have a lot of demand from different states, but it's really logistically challenging for us to just say yes to that because we can't ship our product.
Makes sense. I mean, it's a huge hurdle and good or bad, probably a little bit of a barrier to entry when it comes to your sector and your category. So when you look at that, is the focus in the near term probably staying more geographically constrained and focusing New York City, the Northeast? Does that seem to be the best path forward?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we launched in our first grocery store in November 2025. 6 months later, so now we're in a little over 100 stores,
Amazing.
all in New York. So the kind of five boroughs and broaching a little bit further out to Connecticut, but not quite yet. Our kind of goal by the end of the year is to be in the Northeast more broadly. So kind of all the Northeast states. We're like, itching to get out to California, but we need to actually make sure it makes economic sense and logistic sense. So we'll probably target a more, you know, more regions and further expansion out west over the course of the next year.
So right now everything is DSD, and that direct is for listeners, direct store delivery. You are handling you personally, and are you guys still delivering, or have you expanded as service now?
We used to personally deliver. It's like our orders, we used to be able to just jump on a city bike in New York, and load up a cooler and deliver it to the stores. And then the volume just started increasing to the point we couldn't bike with all this yogurt. And so we're now partnering with a couple of distributors locally here in New York.
I mean, hey, it's still easier than rowing.
In a different way, yeah.
It's still hard, but easier. And so now that you're starting to expand, and I like this conversation because you are in the very early stages of establishing your retail footprint and growing a brand. So it's kind of fun to hear what the experience is like in real time. How are you managing reorders at this size? So, bigger systems, you're going to have automated reorders. You have distributors, intermediaries, brokers, merchandisers. You're doing all this yourself. What is the reorder process like with some of these key accounts?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's kind of scattered. We have some stores that purchase a distributor, right? So our distributor will order, however many cases and then sell to those stores and replenish them accordingly. For a bunch of our stores, they still do direct with us. So it's like we have text threads with people who order, and like once a week, we'll send them, like every kind of Sunday, we'll send a message saying, hey, do you need more yogurt this week? And they'll say yes or no. And then we kind of set it up that way, or it's over email, or there's some kind of ordering platforms. I would say it's very, very scattered. And kind of increasing as you add every store, it gets increasingly more complex. So it's something that we'll have to iron out as we kind of bring on more distributors and expand.
Makes sense. And something we talked about when we first met was almost the hurdle of shelf life. I'm interested in this because I don't have a ton of experience in dairy personally, other than network. It's super sticky. You mentioned there's your actual product shelf life right now versus what the mandatory shelf life you get to distribute it by unit, by KD, and that leads its own inherent issue of that is the shelf with it. How does that math work out? Like, how do you guys think about that as you go forward in navigating, being able to have a great product that meets your specs, flavor profile, and also having a product that's functional or available in the mass grocery?
100%. Yeah, it for our sort of industry and product with the kind of like lower shelf life, what ends up happening is rather than increasing the volume of your production sizes to basically like max them out, we'll probably be increasing the frequency, right? And so in a perfect world, this is like sometimes doesn't really work depending on your co-man and your factory, but kind of in a perfect world, we do smaller runs more frequency. That way you have optimal shelf life at any given time. It's always more cost effective to do as big of a run as possible, right? That's just like the name of the game is you want to get to volumes and get economies of scale. So there'll be a dance as we kind of grow with like, should we increase the size or should we do another run next week to help with shelf life management? But yeah, it kind of depends on stores. And we have a couple sort of internal strategies too to help with some shelf life things as well.
Got it. Great. And it sounds like you both, I mean, your background leads to this as well. You're both very data oriented, and you're probably very focused on optimizing operational schedules, just-in-time inventory, as you're mentioning. How have you found the data availability in this space versus your previous experiences in other?
Horrible. It really is fascinating to me how kind of little information sharing there is. I mean, even as simple as something with your distributor, like very often brands don't even know what stores they're in, right? Which like there's no advantage to that in my eyes of brands not knowing what stores they're in, right? Because like we want to know how we're performing so we can actually invest in things like events in that area or demos or whatever that might look like. And B, like just informing our customers, right? Like we have a store map that we update every time we know we're adding a new store. It's sourmilk.com/stores. And that can get out of date really quickly if all of a sudden our distributor sells to like 10 more stores and doesn't tell us. And so I think that there's definitely a complexity in data sharing. My understanding is that as you get to kind of bigger retailers, the Whole Foods, the sort of like Sprouts, the larger players, you actually get more of that sales data. and you can actually see those velocities. So I'm sure it improves, but at least for right now, with all the independents in New York, it's like very low visibility into how we're performing.
I think as you get more data and you scale, what you also find is you run into more human issues. So right now, you probably have your finger on the pulse. You have friends everywhere. You have friends in the store. You know these people. When you get bigger, then it becomes, oh, they did get the SKU out. The SKU got damaged, and I'm not seeing velocity data. So it gets on what issues that shit. I get more data, but I trust it. So we've always got it. It's a balancing act that I remember when I was building my first company. Same thing. I remember walking into the Whole Foods delivering stuff. I know every day it's on the shelf. And there's a point you look up and you go, I don't know which 30% of the stores and Sprouts are missing my product today. And it just happens. It's just such a crazy industry. I'm glad two young, smart people are coming after it, because I'm sure you'll have some really good insights in the process. But it is something that I unfortunately can't say gets amazingly better. Now,
Yeah, that makes sense.
and you built something I like a lot. I think you call it the Guerrilla Grocery Program, where you have people actually physically like trying to help get placements, show proof of demand. How does that work? I'd love to just hear how you guys came up with it, how that whole program executes.
Yeah, so it kind of stemmed from a shower thought that I had a couple weeks ago or last month. And what happened was we had a customer that went to there's a grocery store chain in New York City called Morton Williams. They have, like 15 or so stores here. And we had one of our customers walk into Morton Williams and say, "Hey, this is my favorite yogurt. I'd really love for you to carry it." And that we didn't ask him to do it. He just like did it his own volition, sent us an email later that night being like, "By the way, I went to Morton Williams and requested your product. Not sure if it'll do anything, but like just want to let you know." And we're like, "Oh, that's awesome. Thanks." The next day, we get an order for all Morton Williams locations to carry sour milk. Yeah. So it was like literally the next day that this sort of came in. And so, we had this thought of like, okay, clearly this is the best way to do sales. And the reason for that is because grocery stores want to listen to their customers. So if I go up to a grocery store and say, "Hey, if you carry this product, I will buy it from you," that's like a whole different messaging than a founder coming to a grocery store being like, "Hey, will you carry my product?" Right? Because they know that the people who are requesting it are actually going to go out and buy it. And our thought process was like, okay, how do we codify this? How do we actually build structure around incentivizing and kind of getting our customers to become evangelists and effectively salespeople for us? And what we came up with was like, okay, if we give our sort of power users, so to speak, our biggest fans, free yogurt in exchange for doing this for us, it's sort of like a win-win-win. So what happens is we give them a case of yogurt, a full case, there's eight units in there. And we say, you can keep 5 out of these 8. So you can keep like 60% of this case is like totally yours, but you have to take 3 units and hand them out to 3 stores in your neighborhood and give them out as samples and request product. It doesn't have to be like, "Hey, I work for this company." It's just like, "Hey, this is my favorite yogurt. We'd love for you to carry it." And they get free yogurt out of it, which is great because they would be buying our product anyways. And they get a more convenient way to buy yogurt in the future because they're talking to their local neighborhood store that they shop at and getting them to carry sour milk. And then the store wins because they're actually getting proof points about a product that, people want to buy. And then of course we get the benefit of like, okay, now we're opening all these doors because our customers are requesting it. So it's sort of like a win-win-win-win in that regard. And we've kind of been piloting it, but it's working really well so far. So probably continue to do it.
I was like, if you already hit 100 stores in New York and it seems like it's scaling fast, I guess one thing I'd be interested in is like, what is your litmus test when it comes to expanding beyond your focus region right now? Like, does something need to happen that you go, "Oh, now I can see why we need to be in Whole Foods naturally," or is there just more of a operational hesitancy?
I think it's both. I think it's both like, when can we get to a point where logistically and operationally we feel confident in shipping our product further out? And what does the data look like in this region first, right? We're in like local independent stores and the data is really good. We're performing like 2 to 3x the national average in terms of velocities here in New York. But how does it perform in Pennsylvania? How does it perform in like Massachusetts, right? Like these are states that, they're not our backyard anymore. And so we want to get data on how that works. And maybe we tweak the packaging because we get feedback that, certain things need to be more clear. Maybe we kind of change our framing and marketing. And so I think it's really like, crawl before you walk before you run. And that's kind of how we're thinking about it regionally.
I like that. And then one last question I always like to ask everybody on here, and you're so new to this, I actually really excited to hear your thoughts. All right, you're a couple of years into this, had a different background career. someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm thinking about starting a," uh, what advice do you give me? What are some things that you wish you knew now that you didn't at the point where you were sitting in your kitchen making your test batches, being excited about sour milk, and now you go, "Man, I wish someone would have told me XYZ from day one." Not necessarily bad, just anything that would have made your life better or the trajectory easier.
That's a great question. So I think one thing that we kind of felt going into this entire process was that we had to get comfortable really quickly that we weren't going to know everything. And I'll give you a concrete example. The first production run we ever did, we were making a pallet of yogurt. And a week before we were kind of doing this production run, had the pallet coming, we were like, oh crap, how are we going to get this yogurt to New York City? Like our facilities like all the way upstate. Like we can't just load up a car with a pallet of yogurt and drive back down to the city. Like we actually had to figure out like how we're getting it from A to B. And it was kind of this thing where we were like, okay, we have no idea how this is going to happen now, but we know like as we move closer, we will figure it out. And so getting comfortable with that ambiguity, and then knowing that you will solve that ambiguity is extremely, extremely important. And so, it's like, I wish I knew everything that I know now that I did before, but I also knew that that wasn't going to be a viable option. If I had to say one thing for a new CPG founder, it would be that it's never too early to start marketing. I think that, like, that was a huge, huge advantage that we had, is that like we didn't have a product, we didn't have a name for the company, we didn't have anything, but we started building a community and building a following around us. And that just paid dividends down the line now that we're actually selling.
And I'm a huge proponent of audience curation and building, even for helping you ideate what you want to make. You might love a pack without knowing the product, or vice versa. You have a product, you don't know the community. It's a great way to understand where you're going. So I think you guys have hit the nail on the head. Sour Milk is one of those brands that really make the founders care about the product, about the process, and about the long term vision of what you can achieve. So I hope everyone has a chance, if they're in New York City, to find the brand, try it out, hopefully on the shelf somewhere in your store soon. That's a wrap for today. So if anything we talked about sounds up, Eileen, we'll give you 10 free checks to check the stores, make sure you know what's happening on the shelf, save you from driving around, and ideally save you from a lot of pain and reset. So as always, we hope you'll listen and come back soon.